Age of Imprisonment has been out for a bit now, the Hyrule Warriors spin-off that tells the story of Tears of the Kingdom's imprisoning war. Now that I've been able to finish the game, I thought it was about time for another Zelda community discussion. So I've brought together a group of talented Zelda content creators to discuss our feelings on the game in great detail. Just a heads up, the first section of our discussion is a spoiler-free overview, but later on we do get into more spoiler-heavy material. There is both a verbal and on-screen spoiler warning when that time comes. Otherwise, let's get into it. I'm Cap Bergerson, and I'll be hosting the discussion today.
Hi, I'm Sim30. I run Gaming Reinvented. We talk about Zelda glitches and news and opinion videos.
I'm Gabe, or Gabora, and I make Zelda videos, mostly about lore, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, my name's Adam, also known as Hyrule Gamer, and I make all sorts of Zelda lore, theory, mystery videos, anything Zelda, I'm interested, and yeah, I'm really excited to talk about some Age of Imprisonment, and thanks for having me on.
Hey guys, I'm Kokiri Theory, or KT. I run a channel where I do a lot of theory and lore analysis videos, so I'm really excited to be digging into Age of Imprisonment with you guys.
Hello. You'll be shocked to learn that I make YouTube videos about Zelda. I also may be one of maybe 5 people on planet Earth that actually buys the Hyrule Warriors game for the gameplay.
Actually, that was one thing I was hoping you would reach out to me. I was like, I know he's a Muso fan, so we need at least one of those on a discussion about this game, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, our first section, we're just going to go over fully spoiler-free thoughts. Obviously, there's a certain amount of quote-unquote spoiler in that you kind of know how the game is going to end based on Tears of the Kingdom. I'm sure a lot of people will click on this video asking, is it canon?
Yes.
Yes, it's canon.
Oh, that could have been awkward.
So there's a certain extent you know how it's going to end, but still there's other stuff thrown in that was not shown in Tears of the Kingdom. So spoiler-free, general thoughts on just like if, game is good or not.
Just general thoughts about the game. I think it's wonderful. It was, in some ways, a big step forward from Age of Calamity. I do feel in some ways it was also a bit of a step back. I feel like there was so much emphasis placed on the story that it's maybe lacking in a little bit of other areas that people like myself, who actually do specifically like Hyrule Warriors games, play it for. I found maybe the content a little bit lacking, and I found the movesets to be maybe a little bit simplified compared to Age of Calamity. But the story was really, really good. I really enjoyed the new characters, which I've always thought that the Hyrule Warriors team does a great job with new characters. Obviously, there's Sia and Lana in the first Hyrule Warriors game, and then Impa and the other handful of new characters in Age of Calamity. And then this one, it's like 60,000 brand new characters, and they're all wonderful. So that's my thought.
Oh yeah, like I would say more than half the roster probably is new characters. Yeah,
80%. Yeah.
But sort of by necessity, based on like just the time period they set it in.
Yeah, like Nehru, I really enjoyed the game, and I thought it met most of my expectations and exceeded other expectations. It felt like a really good way to kind of close the era of the Wilds chapter, which I personally had not been ready to let go of yet. Gameplay-wise, I'm not usually a fan of the Muso-style combat, but this time I found it pretty engaging. I also thought that they built out a really impressive and cool cast, and it filled in a lot of the holes I felt existed in Tears of the Kingdom. It had a big load to carry for a spin-off, but I think it delivered in a lot of ways, and so overall, really good game.
I thought Age of Imprisonment was a brilliant game, and to sort of expand on what was just said, I definitely felt that it had a lot writing on it because Nintendo sort of hyped it up quite a lot, and they really reinforced the fact it was canon, which, got fans very excited. So I think there was a lot of almost nervousness going into it to see how that canon information would turn out. But yeah, I thought it was a really, really good game. The story was solid, and as someone who's not really been into Hyrule Warrior style games before, I've never really found them as engaging. I found this one very engaging, and yeah, I really liked it.
I thought it was a ton of fun. I actually sort of tempered my expectations going into it. I think that was the right move with respect to the lore, which I won't spoil certain aspects of that, but I thought the gameplay was amazing, and the story as a self-contained game I thought was very good, and having a hard time not spoiling things and giving my full opinion, but I'll just say I thought the gameplay was great, the story was great, the music was amazing. The music that plays when you're in the overworld map selecting missions, and it kind of like changes throughout the game depending on where you're at, but like that first song that was stuck in my head for 4 days straight. I loved it.
Oh, wow,
and
really?
so I guess my opinion is, as a self-contained game, I love it. I have some issues with the lore that I'm not going to get into right now, but overall, very good. Highly recommend.
Yeah, for the most part, I enjoyed the game. I feel like it's a lot like Age of Calamity, so if you enjoyed Age of Calamity, you'll enjoy Age of Imprisonment. Felt it did a good job at adding on to Tears of the Kingdom, felt like it added to the lore quite a bit. Did like the new character designs and concepts. I feel they went a bit overboard to the canon side though, in that they kind of went a bit too risk averse. I mean, the game itself's really good and what they added was fine, but I feel like sometimes I wish they'd worked with Nintendo a bit to flesh out a few more things.
Right on. As for myself, I'll echo most of the thoughts here in that I quite enjoyed the game. It's probably not the game I'm going to like revisit often. Still working on my 100% playthrough. I finished the main story, but I haven't gotten 100% yet, and I still do feel motivated to finish up that 100%. So I think overall I quite like it a lot. I only played Age of Calamity start to finish twice, and then I never felt the need to pick it up, and I'd say it's probably the same feeling there. Probably just because the Warriors style is a little different than what I tend to gravitate towards. We'll move into some more specifics. We're gonna just talk about playable characters. The question is if any of you guys have a favorite playable character, and I'll actually break this into a couple points of if it's based on like their moveset or controls, or their characterization within the story, and if you want to throw shade, we can add a least favorite character on there as well.
My most played character is probably Zelda. I'm a playable Zelda super fan, so like I always take advantage of that when I have the opportunity. I also thought Kyo was pretty goated in a lot of scenarios. She had a lot of elemental advantages, which was kind of cool. You know, in all the Zora plays and all the Goron levels, I think she was pretty powerful there. But I think probably just in terms of general overall fun, Calamo was probably my favorite because it was just hilarious to be playing as a Korok and taking on these like massive enemies like a Hinox. I just kept laughing when I was playing as him, and he also just had fun, you know, tag team moments with the other characters. So yeah, I think he's probably my overall favorite. As for least favorite, I think I wasn't crazy about some of the side characters introduced with each, like as the captains. I really like the two Gerudo characters that were introduced alongside Artie. For instance, the Goron ones weren't really resonating with me. I generally don't play as Gorons that often, and some of the Rito characters weren't really resonating with me either. I don't know if that's just their personality or their playstyle, but I wasn't super drawn to them. But yeah, also Artie. I think I should put her as also one of my top favorites. She was really fun to play. She's just iconic and had a lot of really cool attack moves. So
I'm gonna have to go with like a sort of basic answer here. My favorite overall, I would say, was probably the mysterious knight construct. I don't know, I guess because it's the closest thing to Link, and I guess I'm a little basic like that I sort of just liked playing as a Link-like character. And I also just really liked his moveset and stuff. But I do have another favorite, which is specifically for their moveset, and it's Minoru, actually. I really, really enjoyed all of her like Zonai device abilities. I found that really, really cool. And I honestly didn't expect myself to be a sort of Minoru main, but I found myself the more and more I played, I kept playing as Minoru because I just got obsessed with these like the Zonai parts that she uses, especially the one where I don't remember what it's called, but she basically like catapults or like whacks a big ball at the enemies. It was just visually really cool more than anything, and I found that awesome. In terms of like least favorites, I'm kind of on the same board as KT. It was mostly just the captains. They were cool, and I thought they were cool additions to the game, but just gameplay wise, they just weren't as engaging.
Okay, I'm gonna contest a little bit because I think my own takes align more with KT's. Minoru was actually my least favorite character to play.
No.
me too.
It felt too maybe technical in a way, but I will say as far as the captains go, Quino was the exception for me. There's something about a guy just who's going ham with a big sword that works for me. But yeah, probably Artie would be my pick as well. For favorite. She just kicks a lot of ass, I guess, for lack of better words.
We all love a Gerudo warrior. Everybody does.
Yes, exactly. But also for story reasons, I think she resonated with me a lot. I liked what they did with her in the story.
Yeah, so my favorite was Artie. I was trying to just like power through the story, and I was playing on easy mode, and I found that anytime I could select a character that I was the most successful with her secret stone special ability with the lightning, I just found that to be so devastating against the enemies. I loved that. And really, any of the sages who had that secret stone ability, except for Rafika, I didn't find the wind power to be very effective. So if there was ever a situation where you could like choose the 4, I would always pick Rauru, and then Agriston, and then the Zora, and then Artie. Those were like the 4 like favorites for me, just as far as doing maximum damage and powering through the levels as fast as possible so I could get to the next cutscene. And then least favorite, like, I don't know, like Calamo, like even though I loved his character, he might have been my favorite like character. The elemental component of his attacks, I felt like you had to like stay on the same element, otherwise they would like negate each other or something. I could be wrong there, but I couldn't really quite figure out how to maximize Calamo, so I just kind of avoided him. I couldn't figure out how to beat the big enemies with him.
No, Artie's definitely a good pick. I will say about Calamo though, something about a Korok in this situation is immediately hilarious to me. But also like when you see him sprinting across the battlefield and his legs are so tiny and they're just working. I don't know. I just loved having him around for for like vibes reasons.
For sure. He gave me like Yoda lightsaber duel vibes from like the prequels. I don't know why. Just a little guy just jumping around.
Yes, actually. I love that. No, just the imagery of it too is just really funny. Yeah. Also, I'm a sucker for like a big buddy, little buddy dynamic, and that sort of got fulfilled with the mysterious construct in Calamo. There's something about that. I don't know what it is. It just, I find it it's like a trope that I'm always a sucker for.
This is a hard one because there wasn't a character I could ever say is my least favourite. Everyone was fun to use in some way or another. Unlike Age Calamity, where there's a lot of characters I don't jive with game style, everyone here I felt like I could actually use them. So it's kind of hard to really choose in that sense. I mean, I guess I did prefer the sages, like the main characters like Roro and Zelda and Minoru and stuff, but compared to side characters. But overall, I'd say there isn't really anyone that really stood out as bad. It's just everyone was mostly good in their own way, to be honest. Maybe except, I don't know, the shield guy occasionally.
What's his name? Typhon?
Yeah, Typhon. Yeah, he can be a bit slow, sadly.
Yeah, I didn't love Typhon. I actually forgot about him until you said shield guy, and I was like, oh, right.
Same.
The mustache is great, though.
As a character, my absolute favorite was Rafika. It's funny because one of the criticisms I've seen from people who I'm convinced just watched the cutscenes and didn't actually play the game, but one of the criticisms often levied by them is that the characters are all very simple and one note and boring. And it's funny because to me, Artie and Rafika are like better than some of the champions and descendants, in my opinion. Like they're better characters. Rafika's great. And then Artie's my Gerudo wife, so of course I'm gonna love her.
Wait, do you mean Gerudo wife or Gerudo goth girlfriend?
She was my Gerudo goth girlfriend. Now she's my Gerudo goth wife.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
So you missed the ceremony, but I love playing as Artie for reasons very similar to what Gabora said. Her Secret Stone ability just absolutely melts through people. But actually, believe it or not, and I was as surprised as anyone to find this out, my absolute favorite character to play as is the Gerudo captain Ronza. Her ability where you have to time your button press and match the purple circle as it starts to extend out. I felt like I was playing Guitar Hero while I was playing Hyrule Warriors, and I thought that was pretty great. And I've always liked characters with greatsword based movesets, so it was pretty much a match made in heaven from the beginning. So I actually spent most of the game playing as Ronza as soon as I unlocked her. And then my least favorite character, which this makes me quite sad to play as, is Calamo. Historically, I've always struggled with Hyrule Warriors games with characters that are sort of based around like different elemental types attacks and like throwing things around and stuff like that. He reminds me a lot of Tingle in the very first Hyrule Warriors game, and I struggled playing as Tingle for very similar reasons. I love Calamo's character though. He's probably a top 3 character for me.
Also, on the note of Calamo, when I learned that it was Sungwon Cho that voiced him, that was stunning. It feels like a very different role from what he usually does, but I thought the whole cast, all the voice actors, I think did a really bang up job, actually. I always think back to when Breath of the Wild first released, and a lot of people were very critical of Patricia Summerset's portrayal of Zelda, but I think also with every reprisal of the role, as she almost gets like more comfortable with the character, I think she does a better job every time with her version of Zelda. And yeah, I think the whole cast did a great job. I did think it was interesting that there's 2 characters that are recast from Tears of the Kingdom, while the rest all reprised their roles, which was interesting. It was, Rafika and Kia were recast in this game. But I thought the new actors all did a great job as well. I think pretty much everyone is really well characterized.
On the note of Patricia Somerset's performance, I've actually always thought she did a pretty good job, but I was a little bit worried because everything we've heard her voice recently has been the Zelda notes, and I'm not gonna lie, I've definitely felt like she's kind of phoned in her Zelda notes performances. Those are some pretty flat deliveries, so I was a little bit worried going into it that maybe she was just bored of the character. But no, I think that Patricia did a wonderful job in Age of Imprisonment.
But also, when you say phoned in, is that a pun?
It wasn't, but I'm gonna pretend it was intentional.
There you go. I'll add in the... Where is it? Oh, yeah, here. You get this one. There you go. Okay.
Oh. I feel like Master Koga's voice actor probably did the best job in Zelda Notes.
I agree, 100%.
Oh yeah, he went for it.
Yeah, he ate that up.
Even if he sounds a little bit like Arlo at times, he did a great job.
Every character's had a recurring voice actor, seems to do a better job in each new game they're in.
Yeah, no, I agree. Absolutely. It's just one of those things where it's like you get comfortable in the character as a performer and maybe it just comes easier. Perfect. Well, we'll get into more spoilery stuff. So if you're watching this is your spoiler warning. Don't say I didn't warn you. And I guess I want to get into story stuff because I think that's a big draw for this game. Even though we kind of, if you play Tears of the Kingdom, you kind of know what to expect. I think they still did a lot of interesting things with it. So one thing I thought was really cool about it, and feel free anyone to interject, was that they started with this sort of A plot, B plot thing, where you've essentially got like 2 groups that are independently doing their thing. One with Rauru and Zelda at the sort of like forefront of the conflict, and then you've got Calamo and the Night Construct just going off doing their own thing. And then eventually they join up and have these really cool story moments together. And I thought the story was just really good. It ended pretty much perfectly. But everything with Calamo and the Night Construct was, I was like glued to that particular part of the story. But I want to know what you guys think about all of that.
I do feel like I'm still digesting a lot of things, as I'm sure maybe a lot of people are. Like, I feel like there's still maybe some unanswered questions. You know, I feel like as a community, we put out theory videos and forum posts and kind of there's like a hive mind thing that happens where we still figure things out and it takes years. My understanding of certain things could change over time. As I said at the beginning of this, I think as a self-contained game, I thought it was very good. The story, I enjoyed it very much as a standalone thing, but I have some issues with things that are introduced, and it's the same issues that I have with maybe any prequel, really. And I think Nehru, maybe you alluded to this in one of your recent videos, how, you know, in Star Wars.
Yeah, where was Ahsoka in the original movies? What's she doing? She being lazy?
Right, exactly. You know, so like they have to make a complete standalone story, right? So they have to add certain elements. When you add those elements, I mean, it's not technically a retcon because the creator of the thing put it in there and whatever they say goes, right? But I personally have a hard time believing that that actually truly was the original intent. Like using that Ahsoka example, did George Lucas really have Ahsoka in mind when he wrote the original movies, you know? And so I would say the same thing here. Did the Zelda team really have the Night Construct conceptualized when they made Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, etc.? Or did they kind of need that and come up with it when they made Age of Imprisonment? They buttoned it up fine with, you know, saying at the end of the game, oh no, I'm talking about the end of the game already, so.
No, that's okay. This is the full spoilers section. Anything goes now. So.
Yeah, when they say this is like a forbidden technology, we need to kind of bury them, so we're not going to include them in the murals. Fine. I mean, now we're still canon. I do have a hard time believing that that truly was the original story from the get-go. I know I'm going to get a lot of crap for saying that, but that's just how I feel. Back to the Star Wars analogy, you know, in the prequels, they revealed that Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, created C-3PO. Was that really the original story? Especially considering in like in Empire Strikes Back, there are scenes when 3PO and Darth Vader are right next to each other, like when they're about to freeze Han and Carbonite. 3PO and Darth Vader are right there next to each other. But then at the end of episode 3, Bail Organa, I think his name is, wipes the droid's memories. So there you go. Now everything's now that plot hole is severed and we're still canon. But just because like mechanically we're still in canon, it's just weird, I guess. And I feel a little bit like that with some of the stuff in Age of Imprisonment.
I agree. I don't think that like the Night Construct's existence was something they conceptualized when making Tears of the Kingdom. You know, like that wasn't the original story they had in mind. And by necessity of having to make this a complete story, they have to add supplementary extra things. At the same time, I guess my thought is I don't see that as a bad thing necessarily, because they at least explained why we never heard about the Night Construct before. Like that stuff does get addressed. Like the Zelda team lore-wise, I think I don't dislike the lore in any way. I do think they're kind of making it up as they go, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It's not a bad thing. I do wonder if that is what for me stops it from being the greatest thing ever, though.
Yeah, of course, I don't say this to your feelings on the matter are 100% valid, of course, right? Like, and I agree with your thoughts. I guess it's like, does it hamper it for me? No, but it's but I can absolutely appreciate and see that how it would.
And it's just kind of like the lot in life of a prequel. It's a valid way to feel, you know. Like I am a massive fan of the Jedi Survivor games, like Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. I love Cal Kestis, who's one of my favorite Star Wars characters ever. I'm going into that third one when it comes out knowing, you know, they're going to have to do something with Cal that explains why he's, you know, Cal Kestis would probably single-handedly change the outcome of the original games, or the original movies, sorry. So we're going to have to figure out why he was never around. They're going to have to stick Montana lore, or they're going to have to kill him off. Like something's going to have to happen to explain why he was not, you know, side by side with Luke annihilating Darth Vader in the original movies, right? And he certainly would be if he had a choice. Regardless of what they decide to do in the third game, it's gonna feel contrived. There's no way around it. Like there is almost no way they can do it that doesn't make it. It's like, oh really? He got trapped on a planet just for long enough for the original movies to happen?
I mean, that's what they did with Ezra, right? In Rebels.
Exactly. Or
yeah.
Of course he got killed off 3 days before Luke met Obi-Wan, you know, like that kind of stuff, right? Like it's going to feel contrived no matter what they do. They're kind of in a darn if you do, darn if you don't kind of situation, because like if they don't do those contrivances, they get yelled at. Look at Age of Calamity, right? People can be like, oh, we'll just advertise it as non-canon. Well, then nobody plays your game and nobody cares about it, right? Like people's biggest and this is not a shot at you, Gabe. This is a shot at my comment section mostly. But there's just like ages and ages of people complaining and whining and moaning about Age of Calamity not being canon. So if they finally get what they want, which is Age of Imprisonment is canon, and then they're complaining that it feels boring and contrived. And it's like, well, of course it does. They're just telling you the story you already knew, which you claimed is what you wanted.
Yeah, and I think that's part of why, like I said, sort of the B plot of like Calamo and the Night Construct. I think that's part of why I was so invested in that story, was it was not the story I knew already. And so seeing that play out, and I kept wondering, like, as the story went on, like, so how come we don't? At first, during the gameplay, I was like, okay, well, they were doing this adventure separately from Zelda, so it makes sense, because the Dragon's Tears in Tears of the Kingdom are all Zelda's memories. So, okay, that makes sense. Like, this was not something she saw. But then the gang all gets together, and they're starting to fight together. And I was like, okay, well, maybe it's just because we got very specific snapshots, and, you know, these guys weren't sages. But then they do touch on it and explain it, and I think it worked, or it worked for me. I was like, yeah, okay. I can absolutely see, especially with the evil construct, I think the explanation made a lot of sense of like, oh yeah, this is something we don't want to keep in the history books because it could be dangerous. And I think also part of why that explanation worked for me was because it was like, okay, this isn't even the first time that they've done this. Like the royal family buried the Sheikah technology in Breath of the Wild's history, right? In that backstory. So it's like, it's not even the first time the royal family would have said, oh, you know what, this is too dangerous, we gotta hide it. They did the same thing with the Triforce itself as well. At a certain point, we gotta just secret this thing away because it's too dangerous. So
let's bury our problems away.
Yeah, that's been the royal family solution for many many generations.
Hyrule family loves a cover up.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the shadow temple, right?
The whole Shadow Temple. Yeah, exactly.
What about, Ganon in Tears of the Kingdom?
Yeah, he's literally just a buried problem. There is a layer of irony to that, though, actually, with Ganondorf's ceiling, in that they build these murals to be like, keep historical records so that, people know what's down here, only for the royal family later to be like, actually, we're never gonna teach anyone about that and we're gonna hide this away.
I feel like, as far as the story goes in Age of Imprisonment, one of the challenges I think I found with that whole night construct and buried technology thing is that it kind of felt like that a lot of prequels do. They just kind of add a separate story that's supposed to go on at the same time as the main story, then somehow doesn't interfere with the main story. And it always felt like there's a bit of a weird, but why did it stay so separate? I mean, it's the same problem, say, the Mario RPG remakes and their side stories have. It's like, but why is this element that's already there for years, already going on in the background, not factor into the rest of the plot? I feel they did do at least some work setting up, though. I mean, if you look at Zelda Notes, there's actually reference right to Calamo, Ancient Tree Stump, whatever. So it feels like a few of those Zelda Notes things were probably designed to set up things at Age of Imprisonment.
Yeah, I think I need to go back because there's that one with the Ancient Tree Stump, of course, that everyone has talked about, and I feel like I need to go back and re-listen to them all and see if there's any other sort of hints or anything interplay between Zelda Notes and Age of Imprisonment now. But I do think, actually, on your note about like sort of the A plot and B plot intersecting, I do think that's something they did okay with here, where I didn't feel like, that the two things have no impact on each other, because there were a couple instances where they kind of like cross paths, and I think at one point Zelda catches a glimpse of the Night Construct and is like, oh, what the heck, did you see that? Was that a Korok riding a construct? And Ra was like, there's no time, we're literally fighting, So I think they did that sort of interplay between those plot threads pretty decently. And even in instances like that where Ra was like, this is not the time to get into that, like a surfing Korok that you just saw. It was even like a little humorous at times, so.
I think as far as the construct goes, the most interesting parts are probably the whole sky section thing, the whole flight levels, I guess.
The Star Fox levels.
Yeah, basically the ones that prove this team should make Star Fox a switch to.
Yes.
Yes.
But I'm going to be honest, I think they worked a lot better than the Divine Beast one did in Age of Calamity. Like, oh my god.
Yes.
They were so much more fluid, so much more fun to play, because they just weren't clunky and slow, and they actually felt they could control.
The Divine Beast levels were fun in idea and just wretched in practice. The Star Fox levels in this game were phenomenal, in my opinion. When it switched to Galaga, top-down Galaga mode, oh man, I lost my mind. That was so fun.
I did think that was a really pleasant surprise too. It was like, oh, we're doing this kind of level now, and it just controlled so much smoother than those Divine Beast levels in Age of Calamity.
I was pleasantly surprised just because I didn't struggle with them. I mean, you look at these gameplay changes and you're like, this could be a nightmare, and it's like, no, actually it wasn't.
Please get Koei on Star Fox.
Yes,
pronto.
Please.
If there's one thing, as we said earlier, is that I feel like some of the bosses and stuff in those levels felt like probably should have appeared outside those levels, because as well as the Gleops, I think we also only had likes in those levels too, didn't we?
Oh, were there? Oh.
In that depths one, we go down to depths, there's likes on the side.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about the depths one. I was only thinking about the sky ones, which by the way, they already used the sky islands in just those Star Fox levels better than Tears of the Kingdom used the sky islands.
Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but did the Night Construct in Calmo literally just blast a hole through Hyrule's crust into the depths?
That seems
or was there already a hole there?
Oh, actually, no, I think there was a hole there, but I think they broke more of it through. So there was like the start of a chasm, but then they just smashed through what was left.
I did actually note that down as something I took a little bit of issue with, and I guess I missed that there was already a hole there when I noted that, because I remember thinking that the Birdia Lookout chasm, I was like, oh, they should have gone through there instead, because that's one that already existed, at least in Breath of the Wild.
And in the Zelda notes, in the Breath of the Wild Zelda notes, Zelda has a note on that chasm, and she calls it, I think, a chasm to the depths or something, and that note is supposed to be before the events of Breath of the Wild. It's like in the 100 years ago.
I remember the first time I replayed Breath of the Wild after Tears of the Kingdom, making a note of like how almost weird it felt. There's the Yiga hideout one as well, and almost how weird it felt like being sort of at the precipice of those chasms and being like, I know now that the depths are there, but I can't go there, and it's like this sort of weird feeling. But yeah, I think they could have played into that here, but instead they just At least in my notes, they just blew a hole in the ground and I was like, whoa, okay, we can just do that. All right. And then that chasm is going to get covered up again, and then it'll reopen.
In the upheaval,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So I was like, okay, interesting. I did think the other way, I think Tobio's Hollow was the other method they took into the depths in the early game. And that worked for me because that always felt like kind of like almost like artificially constructed entrance in its Tears of the Kingdom appearance, at least. So that one worked. But yeah, I thought that was funny. Just like they just blast the ground.
You have to wonder, like, where did the construct factory come from if it's not in Age Imprisonment?
The depths are a big place, so maybe they just never found it in that era or something, or maybe it was there and we just, you know, there was no story reason to go there. I'm not sure, but
Just having fun, given we kind of went down Tobio's Hollow in the beginning, which was exactly where the factory is.
that's true. That's a good point.
I also felt like, on the note of Sky Islands, there's two things I find quite interesting that should probably be mentioned here. The first one is the fact that, unlike in Tears of the Kingdom, you actually take the other NPCs and characters up there. So, you know, suddenly I guess the Highlands are exploring the sky now, which is kind of funny. And the other thing is, I feel like the sky didn't really do as much of it outside the shooting missions. I feel like they kind of missed a lot of opportunities when it come to design to those levels up there. A lot of them were just the same sort of setup, like the same islands.
If I had a nickel for every time Switch 2 Zelda title had copy-paste Sky Islands.
Like, you don't get to see the Thunderhead Isles or Dragonhead Isle or Water Temple, the Zonai Furnace place, or or the Bravery Island places, or other areas. I feel like would have been interesting to see as levels here.
I will say though, I think the use for the Stormwind Arc was like as like a warship basically was the best way they could have included it. Yeah, it's that was probably the best way, but the rest of the sky stuff was a little lacking for sure.
The maze islands, the floating ones, in the Rauru Zelda notes for Tears of the Kingdom, he has notes on those mazes, right? The sky version. But when I was flying around in Age of Imprisonment, I was looking pretty hard. I could not see them there. I don't know if that means they actually are not there, or they just didn't render them or whatever. And there's a lot of stuff like that in this game where it's like, I can't see it. Does that mean it doesn't exist? Or does that mean the developers just didn't put it there?
Right. Yeah, I guess with Zelda notes in mind, I would say probably the latter, probably that it in lore existed, but it just wasn't rendered for us to see for some reason. But that's a good point. I didn't even think about the maze islands. Yeah.
At the same time, though, I mean, stuff like the Great Plateau, like the Great Sky Island, was it raised after the Imprisoning War?
It was, yeah.
The Great Sky Island was, for sure.
Yes.
I think the
Some
other
thinking
ones...
maybe tell the others did as well. I mean, someone may tell the others were set up at a similar time. Like, maybe that's why the Thunderhead and mazes weren't there.
I think Rauru's notes make it, like, confirm that there were a lot of them up there prior to Zelda and Minru lifting, or in the Sages lifting up the Great Sky Island. Because, like, his notes take place while he was alive prior to the Imprisoning War. And he's, like, on islands talking about them. So I do think it is the case that most, if not all of the islands except for the Great Sky Island were up there. And then they just raised up the Great Sky Island.
I think that is the case, yeah. It's specifically the Great Sky Islands that were raised up. I think even in the Tears of the Kingdom cutscene with the Water Sage, during her Kia's Secret Stone Demon King speech, when we see Zelda at the Water Temple talking to her, I think it is also like already in the sky. I don't think Zelda was there. Like, I think for the Great Sky Islands being lifted, I think she set the plan into motion, but that she got draconified herself prior to it being lifted. And I think in the cutscene, when she does that, it's still on the ground. So she made the plan and handed it off to the sages. And then sometime after she was draconified, they raised the Great Sky Islands, I think. So...
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I mean, she draconifies at the Temple of Time, like behind the Temple of Time while it's on the ground. So,
and the sages are kind of just standing there and watching it happen from a distance. Just as a side note, speaking of Zelda getting draconified, they didn't have to stick that one glimpse of her at the very end in the cutscene there.
That was rude.
It was just like in the background, and it was like a gut punch. No.
There she is.
Meanwhile, I'm already mourning for Calamo and the Night Construct, and then you had to hit me with that too. It was just, oh my god.
Exactly.
I guess the best way to put it is like when the credits rolled and the screen was black and I was just staring at my own reflection in the TV, all I could do, I could only mutter 5 or 6 words I just said. So that was the Imprisoning War.
Oh no! I should have known someone.
I'm
would
sorry.
like this joke.
Yeah, I thought it was a wonderful story. Most of the criticism I've seen from Age of Imprisonment so far, in terms of the story, seems to be people complaining that it doesn't answer enough questions and that it doesn't explain enough things. And, it's fair to feel that way, but I do think it's, at some point, people got to remember what video game series this is. And they got to realize, if you want to play a game where, there's a codex entry for every minute aspect of the lore, like go play Skyrim or Destiny or something like that. I feel like we've reached to the point where people are basing how good a Zelda game is on how many questions it answers, and that's just insane to me. If Ocarina of Time was released in the modern day, I really do feel like these people, they would be calling it a bad game because it doesn't give you very many answers about what the Hyrulean Civil War was like, right? They leave that a mystery and they don't answer the questions, and because of that the game sucks. To me, it's just that's always been the Zelda series, answering a couple questions and then leaving a ton of questions up to mystery. I think that Age of Imprisonment does a perfectly good job of threading the needle that most Zelda games do. I think the problem is just that Tears of the Kingdom really did have so little answers that people are expecting Age of Imprisonment to sort of do twice the work of a normal Zelda game to try and answer things that we were wondering about. Personally, I think we got, we found out how the Zonai were killed. That's a pretty gigantic thing to learn. We found out how they were wiped out. One area of the world that has been a mystery for people with the ancient tree stump for a long time. We got answers for that. Would I have liked to learn more about the actual ancient Zonai? Yes, of course I would have. We all would have. Would I have loved to find out where the mix-up with the barbarian armor came in? Yes, absolutely. I would love to learn that. Would I love to learn all sorts of stuff? Yes, but I don't think that it is a Zelda game's job to be an encyclopedia. And it frustrates me when people knock a Zelda game points for not just being an encyclopedia, because that's just not what this franchise is. As you were saying earlier, the Zelda team very much does just make their lore up by the seat of their pants, and that has been the case since the very beginning of the series. We know absolutely nothing about Termina. We know so little about it, right? If that was the case nowadays, if Majora's Mask was released nowadays, we don't learn the true origin of the ancient tribe. We don't really learn the true origin of where Majora comes from. We don't even really learn who Majora truly is. People would frame that as a sin, whereas that's half the reason that Majora's Mask is so special, is because of the ambiguity that it's clouded in. But nowadays the Zelda fandom is just so, I don't know, wiki-pilled, where everything needs to have a fully fleshed out explanation, or else it's committing some sort of grave sin. I thought Age of Imprisonment answered plenty of questions. I was very satisfied with the new information it offered.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think in general, though, from a lore perspective, I'd rather leave the table a little hungry for more than feel bloated in a way.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being super invested in the lore like that. I just think when you're getting to the point where you're judging a game like Zelda based on how much new lore it introduces, that's where I start to have an issue.
No, absolutely. And I think, I apart from a lot of other Zelda YouTube channels, I think I take a unique perspective, maybe, or hopefully I try to, in that I really love Zelda for the gameplay, and the lore is awesome and I love it, but it's not why I love it, if that makes sense. I think I love the lore of Zelda because its gameplay is so good. So for me personally, I've always taken the position of it doesn't matter how good a game's story is, if it's not fun to play, I don't give a shit.
And even with the lore, one of the things that always attracted me to the lore of Legend of Zelda is it felt so different from lore in any other video game series. It's kind of like history versus mythology, right? If you take something like Skyrim, for example, that lore feels very historical, you could write textbooks about the different eras that happened in the history of the Elder Scrolls universe. You would be able to fully flesh it out, right? Totally. And you would have a feeling like you have an objective idea of what happened. But with Legend of Zelda, the lore feels very similar to Greek myth, for example, where, we don't have the full idea and we have two things that contradict each other and we just have to try and come to terms with a happy middle in that. And that to me is what I've always found so interesting about the Zelda lore, is that it's more of a mythology than it is a history. And it seems like people want it to become a history, and that's sort of where I find myself butting heads with most of the Zelda fandom.
No, I think that's legit. And I think the sort of malleable aspect of the lore is something that I jive with, because I don't want outright contradiction necessarily, but I do think that the position of it being a legend, in the fact that sometimes things are maybe lost to time or misinterpreted, can make for more interesting stories, because it gives them elbow room.
Up until the timeline, I was actually legitimately a literal legend theorist.
I never went that far with it.
The timeline shattered that.
The literal legend theory is one I always have outright rejected, and I think there's too much connective tissue between games. For anyone watching who's like, what are they talking about now? The literal legend theory is the idea that there's no chronology at all, and that every game is a literal retelling of the same story. And it's just one that's been maybe less popular these days, thankfully, but
well, the timeline killed it. For me, it was always like there are clusters of games that are just reinterpretations. So, like, obviously, Majora's Mask is a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time, for example. But for me, it was always just like there are clusters of games, and each cluster is just a reinterpretation of the same story. I loved the way that they did the Calamo thing. I understand like what Gabe was saying about how it feels contrived. Absolutely, it feels contrived, and it feels like it was added on for this game, and it wasn't something they had in mind when they were designing the ancient tree stump to begin with. But for me, that doesn't really matter. It just fits so beautifully. It reminds me of like the way Metal Gear Solid 5, the ending of that game, completely reinterpreted Metal Gear 2 from, back on the MSX computer console. I just love when one game just introduced something that completely changes how you interpret another game. And obviously this is not quite to the same degree as something like Metal Gear Solid changing how you reinterpret the story of the second Metal Gear game. It's a small thing where it's just like, now when you go to the ancient tree stump in Breath of the Wild, you're standing on Calamo, right? But to me, that still feels very special. One of the Zelda Twitter users had a post pretty shortly after the game came out where they were just like hanging out on the ancient tree stump, and like I just thought that was so sweet. Like that's just such a precious thing, right? Not a huge amount of Zelda games have had that sort of impact on a previous game, right? Like a couple of them have. Echoes of Wisdom, for example.
Oh yeah, well, reframing the entire creation myth of the universe. Absolutely. I remember the first time I played Skyward Sword start to finish, I went and booted up Ocarina of Time. I got through to the point where you're about to pull the Master Sword, and I remember just stopping in that chamber and just being like, okay, wow, I can't look at this sword the same way now.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm getting at, right? Like that's a great way to explain it. Like the way we feel towards the Master Sword is now how a lot of us feel towards the ancient tree stump, and like it's impressive that they managed to pull that off.
Well, I'll say I'm probably guilty of being the kind of person who demands a lot of lore from the Zelda games, mostly because my personality is like, once I have a question, it drives me crazy not to have the answer. So I've really had to like rein in my expectations, I think, of Age of Imprisonment, which I think a lot of people placed expectations on it because there were a lot of questions still outstanding from Tears of the Kingdom. And I'm a Tears of the Kingdom defender, so like I don't go as far as some people. I really enjoyed that game. I enjoyed this game too. But, I overall like really respected, the balance that they played of preserving that canonicity while being able to add an interesting angle to a story that we pretty much already knew. I thought they added a lot of really delightful surprises. And I think a lot of why the story worked was because of Zelda as the primary protagonist. Like from an emotional standpoint for Zelda, I loved seeing her bond with the people of the past. It was a great way to flesh out those new characters. And she's super traumatized from the events of previous games and lost all these people she loved. So like watching her be embraced by this like found family who supported her, her passions and her research, that added a lot to her story, made the draconification even more impactful, which was something I was worried about. I was worried that something about the story would undermine the sacrifice, and I don't think it did. And I think splitting the story also was great for driving the story and adding a lot of anticipation. There was a lot of suspense building up about Zelda and the Night Construct meeting, and so it felt really rewarding when we finally got to link up. Yeah, I think that's just part of her personality. Like, she's intrigued by the construct. That made me want to investigate the mystery of his identity more. And I thought the finale worked really well. It was really satisfying as well. At the end of the day, like, even though they had to sort of hand wave away the existence of Calamo and the Night Construct, for me, again, it worked because it felt like the overall themes of the game were aligned with like the mainline games. Like, this technology can be corrupted based on the spirit of the user. That felt very like Ghibli in a similar way to the mainline games. Like, specifically made me think of like the Laputa Castle in the Sky movie, which is like, you know, we have to destroy this technology so people in the future don't get a hold of it. And that felt, I think, like you said earlier, like tied into the royal family covering up the Sheikah technology. And so that it felt maybe a little bit repetitive, but it did feel on brand for the story. And also for me, the Forbidden Construct just like repeatedly kicked my butt, and I died. Those were the only times I died, was every battle with the Forbidden Construct, and I ended up surviving, you know, the final battle on half a heart. Going from that to them saying like, this is legitimately dangerous, I was like, okay, I get why they would want to cover this up. Like, it made sense for that boss to be incredibly difficult, at least for me. But yeah, so shout out to Linalia for preserving the canonicity and making the game work.
I'm also a sucker for like the found family trope. This version of Zelda is one that has been so stifled in her upbringing by her father, right? And so this was already something I felt in Tears of the Kingdom, but I love that they gave it more attention here. Just this idea of her being able to embrace her interests and even like be encouraged to pursue them by whether it be Rauru or Sonya or even Minoru. I think the first time they meet in this game where Minoru is like, I can tell you're interested and you can take a look at this if you want, you know, there's no need to hide your interest. That immediately jumped out to me like, oh, she's literally grown up having to hide those interests because her father would, you know, shout her down for being interested in the Sheikah technology of the time, right? Yeah, just seeing that relationship play out was really great. I agree.
As a capital A King Rome hater, it was quite lovely to see Princess Zelda get to have a dad that was not afraid to show affection towards her.
Yes.
Even, and this is for all the King Rome defenders, even when his kingdom was at stake. I think I just read too much Lord of the Rings for me to believe that the world being at stake is a good reason to be a massive jerk to people.
Right.
I'm firmly of this belief. If you take King Rome out of the occasion and you swap him for Aragorn, Zelda's unlocking her powers 100%.
Oh, real.
Katie, I hope you know, my whole soapbox about gameplay versus story didn't make you feel called out.
No,
There's a
not called out, but I know I'm on the spectrum of like people who are more into lore than gameplay, but like at the end of the day, I just want to have fun. I'd love to have my lore questions answered, but at the same time, if every single question was answered, we wouldn't have anything to talk about. Like, that's what theory channels are built on, is the ambiguity. Totally. So I think they left enough things unanswered that we can still continue to talk about it, which is the fun part.
Absolutely.
I'm calling you out, Katie.
It's okay. I'll take it.
No, and what I was saying is I think it's totally fine to want answers, to even feel upset that you didn't get them. It's just for me, it's when people like deduct their view of the game because they didn't get those answers, and I don't think that that's something that you probably do.
I think further to that is I don't think it would be fair to deduct this game of points based on answers you wanted from a different game.
Definitely.
Yeah,
they cooked way harder than they needed to, for sure.
Totally, right.
I feel like the thing I loved about this, the thing I loved personally about this story was feeling like you did get quite a lot of answers, actually. And I'm also very much on the side of Zelda games have always been more on the side of leaving stuff unanswered. And that's what's made a lot of this community online interesting. Like, a lot of the lore and theory videos you see and have like popularized that sort of scene on YouTube all came from how the Zelda developers make their games. And it's leaving breadcrumbs. It leaves it up for fan discussion, fan speculation, and just that's the Zelda way. I don't expect more than that from a Zelda game. Going into this release, I knew I was going to be excited about the lore, obviously, I'm sure we all were, but I did sort of have to just keep my expectations in check because, like you guys were saying, of course we want to know all the answers, but the thing that makes it interesting is not knowing all the answers. And yeah, I thought Age of Imprisonment was really good for giving us the right amount of answers on the right amount of things. Like, I was a huge fan of finding out why the Zonai had their downfall, and like Nehru said, that was a very big piece of lore that I don't think's been missed, but I feel like in some ways it's not always been appreciated how big a lore drop that was, because that was a big question when Tears of the Kingdom came out. There's obviously Calamo, there's all sorts of things in the game that were answered, but my favorite thing personally was the developments on the Zonai, and it has left us with some more questions. Like, there's some questions around King Rauru, for example, and what he's been up to before all of this, what they've potentially been working on, researching. And yeah, I just find it really interesting that the game has answered a lot, but also left us with some more questions to, go and make videos on, discuss it with other Zelda fans and stuff. And I thought it was excellent all around, to be honest. It's about what I expected.
Also, the answer being that they terminated themselves is incredible.
This got touched on a little bit about reframing sort of things. I meant to mention as well that I thought Lenalia's inclusion here in her characterization was really nice to see, because there's a whole quest line in Tears of the Kingdom about finding the writings that she left behind, and it's, I guess, cool to put like a name and a face and voice behind those writings from those stone tablets in Tears of the Kingdom. I think, yeah, Kokiri Theory, you're the one that totally called that one as soon as she was in a trailer as well, that was who that character was.
Unhinged, one frame, I was like, that's who that is. That is 100% the Chamberlain.
100%.
It was great.
Totally called it.
I'm going to be real. Lenalia scares me a little bit.
She is giving Dompe a little bit.
Flag sort of tendencies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But she's sweet.
is she a Dompe ancestor? That's my next video.
Oh no.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Was giving Dompe. And she also at one point was mentioning like something about the undead, and I was like, Is she an ancestor or is she a descendant?
Yeah, I guess
I don't know.
Dampe is a character who is like paranoid about the paranormal as well, and she had a few lines that were kind of in the same vein.
How do we reconcile like how Lenalia speaks and then like how she writes? Because the tablets they're written in that like ancient style. Like you basically, like if you just read them raw, you can't understand them. Wordsworth, I think his name has to actually like give you the plain English summary.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of like the written language evolving. I think that is more or less a real life phenomenon of written language just changes over time, and like even if you read those, things are spelled weird, but if you like actually take the time to like sound out the literal translation, it is vaguely English still, at least in the English version of the game. So if it's just like things are spelled weirdly, but like recognizable words are there. So I assume it's just a case of the written language evolved over time.
And there has to be some level of abstraction, right? Like, for example, when Zelda was sent back in time and Rauru and Sonia found her, the first thing that she should be doing is staring at them blankly while they're speaking some language she's never heard in her life, right? Because the time gap is so massive that there is like absolutely zero chance that she would understand. Even English, like regular English, has changed so much just in a couple hundred years, right? So if you're going from one era to the next, there's zero chance that Princess Zelda would understand Rauru and Sonia, and she would have to be taught the language, the version of Hylian that they spoke back then and all that kind of stuff. But because it's a video game and we don't want to spend 13 hours of our runtime watching Princess Zelda take ancient Hylian lessons, we just kind of handwave it. You gotta always kind of approach the Zelda series through the lens of abstraction, right? Like, you go into Kakariko Village in Ocarina of Time, and you have to just know that that's not actually how Kakariko Village really looks, because a city with a population of 8 would become horrifically inbred in about 30 years, right? And it would become maybe... I don't want to throw shade at the Appalachians, but I think you know where I'm going with this.
On the other hand, it is the town Dampe lives in, so maybe...
That's true. You might not be wrong, and it is in the mountains, so I guess it checks out. I'm sorry, Tyler. I don't mean to throw shade at your home state, Tyler Townsend, my dear friend. And I think you just got to look at the Zelda series through that lens of abstraction, and the same thing goes for things like Princess Zelda being sent back in time. I'm sure she probably did have issues understanding people and probably had to learn how to speak ancient Hylian. It's just that would not make for very exciting cutscenes, and when your cutscenes are already at a premium because of the memory system, are you really going to waste time showing her learning the new language?
One of the things I really liked about the cutscenes specifically in this game, particularly in the earlier stages of the game, is all of those scenes that were basically expanded versions of Tears of the Kingdom scenes, or memories, sorry. I really, really liked that. It helped to give just a wider perspective of what was going on, particularly with the Molduga Assault. I really liked the sort of expanded view on that, seeing different perspectives of it rather than just Hyrule's view of it. It was really cool.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the whole thing with Artie's involvement in that, where it's like almost like reframes it like the Molduga Assault was the distraction, and Artie, the martyr, was being sent to sort of attack the plateau from the other side. Artie's whole sorry to derail now, Artie's whole involvement in the story of like being this martyr character that like Ganondorf was using was really great. I thought that was handled very well and played into her character and her eventual alliance with Hyrule. And even just like expanding on things that were touched on in Tears of the Kingdom, where it's like, you know, a lot of people were like, oh, how come Zelda didn't tell them more stuff about the future and stuff, and seeing that she tried to, and every time she brought it up, Sonia basically shut her down and was like, don't talk about the future, like we can't know about it, because people were like, why wouldn't she speak up? Well, she tried and she got shut down, and given her upbringing, it makes sense she wouldn't push the matter further once she was shut down like that, you know.
We haven't even talked about it at all this entire time. I just want to say I loved how they fleshed Sonya out in this game. I felt completely hollow when she was killed in Tears of the Kingdom, but I actually got a little emotional when she was killed in this one. And then at the end, when her hand appeared, oh man, that choked me up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I got emotional there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a testament to how well they did her character here, because she was fine in Tears of the Kingdom, but she just had so little screen time that it was hard to get an attachment to her. Like, I see a common criticism in the game is that the starting drags out a little bit. It takes a while to get going. And I agree with that, but I think it's because they wanted to give Sonya lots and lots of time to sort of grow on you as a character and give her and Zelda lots of bonding moments. It hugely paid off, in my opinion.
And even with all that time, I was like, when she died, I was like, it's too soon. Like, I knew it was going to happen, but it just felt like she was taken abruptly, even though I knew it was coming. And so I think they executed that really well.
Yeah, and they did a good job of keeping her as a presence throughout the rest of the game, so you're never really forgetting about her. You know, Rauru always saying, like, what would Sonya do? And, like, Princess Zelda just thinking about her. Like, they did a really good job of keeping her a presence even after she passed away.
That's another thing where it's like, I feel like next time I go back to play through Tears of the Kingdom, I think a lot of those scenes will probably hit harder. Especially, you know, there's, I think one of the memories where Robert's even like laying Sundelions at Sonia's grave.
Something that is a huge improvement over the previous two Hyrule Warriors games. I really loved how they used the in-mission dialogue to continue character development instead of just having them yapping at each other and saying nonsense like they did in the previous two Hyrule Warriors games. They used like the in-mission dialogue as a way to actually further flesh out character interactions and stuff like that. There was one mission, Artie and Rafika go out on a mission, and like the entire mission dialogue is just them having a conversation about the grief and self-pity that Artie feels, and Rafika basically trying to talk her through it and, you know, tell her like, you know, it's okay for you to feel that way. You know, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for feeling that way, but it's also okay for you to lean on your friends a little bit. You know, you don't have to do all of this alone. And that's something that's very new to the Warriors series, where 99% of in-mission dialogue in Warriors games is completely missable. Like, it's just like Darunia going, that was a good one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas like
True.
in this, like, these characters are actually like talking to each other and developing their character a little bit. And now Artie and Rafika have a dynamic that they didn't have before, and it's all because they wisely used the mission dialogue, which I thought was really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's even a very early one. I think it's in like one of the training missions I mentioned earlier, where like Egreston and Rauru used to be like enemies straight up, you know. They used to like literally fight.
Yeah, and that's something you miss if you don't read the mission dialogue.
Yeah, and not just in the missions as well, but also the quest descriptions on the overworld map as well often have a lot of little character moments. If you're not paying attention to a lot of this stuff, like, and a lot of that dialogue, you'll miss the fact that Sholani is totally gay for Artie in the best way.
She's swooning over her. I love it.
Or like the blossoming little romance friendship between Kia and the Zora captain.
Oh, is it Lago or Cadlin?
Cadlin.
But I think I did miss
Whichever
that.
one is an ancient.
Yeah, I was like, Lago's too old.
you have to Jones him up to have the courage to ask her to train with him.
Oh,
and then
okay.
All of a sudden they spend a lot of time training together.
Oh, okay. All right. See, I missed that one. I gotta reread through some of this stuff.
That's the one downside of those, is that if you miss it, you miss it. And there's not really a way to go back and check them, I guess, unless you go through the log of dialogue before the quest ends.
You know what I hated though? Like at the end of the mission, like if you had completed the final objective, like you could not pause. You can't do anything. Like none of the buttons work. You had to like time it right. You had to like pause right before you kill the final enemy.
Yeah.
I missed a lot of stuff because of that, because I just was not reading it as I was playing through. And then I wasn't pausing fast enough.
Yeah. Sometimes there's also so much action going on screen as well that like it's hard to stay up to date with it. Like as this dialogue is flashing by too, so it's like you have to actively be looking for it.
I had a question I would love to hear everybody's answers for. If everybody here could pick one time period or moment in Zelda history to be turned into a Warriors game, what would it be? And for me, it's like certainly the Hyrulean Civil War. I think that would be ripe for good storytelling.
Ooh. I think that would be my pick as well, actually.
There's two that I'd go between. It would be that as well, the Civil War, or the sort of like pre-Skyward Sword era.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
That's one that I think would be really interesting if they did it canon again.
And you would be able to build a story around Hylia being an actual character. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, you'll probably get some Master Sword lore as well, Fi, all that good stuff.
Okay, I'm changing my answer.
I think that's a great answer, though, honestly. Especially if you have Hylia as like your main playable character. That would be super cool.
I was going to say just recency bias, just because there are still unanswered questions about the Zonai. And this isn't Age of Imprisonment's fault, but what's frustrating is that you think you're in the ancient past, but there actually is another level of ancient past, because Rauru and Minoru keep referring to the ancient Zonai. And so now we know there's even further back. If you really want answers about the Zonai, you have to go down another level in the Zonai rabbit hole. And so I guess if I had to pick one, that would be that. And I still cling to my theory that the Zonai were evil conquerors of Hyrule, so I'd love to see that, but I think that has continued to be debunked, I guess.
Has it, though? Has it been debunked?
They keep saying that the Wind Temple was a gift, and they keep saying that over and over again, but every time I see it, it looks like a giant weapon, so I don't know.
A warship with giant cannons on it.
Yeah.
I do love how the Zonai are doing archaeology on the ancient Zonai. It very much reminds me of how Egypt was such a long-lasting civilization that there were Egyptian pharaohs that were leading archaeology projects about early Egyptian history.
Yeah.
Like I thought that, which was always, or even Rome, like there were late Romans who were doing history writing about the early Rome, for example. And so the Zonai kind of, I felt like they were like an analog for that, which I thought was pretty cool. CM30 and Gabe, I want to know what you guys pick.
It's a kind of hard one. I mean, you've already said that a Civil War and the pre-Hylia stuff, and you've seen the stuff about this more ancient Zonai, but I mean, I guess there's also like pre-Wind Waker stuff, like pre-Flood stuff.
That would be pretty cool.
Sort of. I still feel on the Zonai topic, there must be something weird going on with ancient Zonai, given that they're wiped out by an army of war machines at some point.
I have so many questions, and I don't think I'm ever going to get the answer, which is so frustrating, but it's fine. It's fine. I'll just lean into it.
The ones that you listed out were great too. The pre-Skyward Sword one, that'd be awesome. But I guess I'll go with 10,000 years ago Tapestry Calamity Battle.
That'd be a good one.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm like KT. I want to know. There's lore that I want to know, so I would want that game just get some lore about that era of the timeline.
I thought of another good one, which would be the pre-Minish Cap Hero of Men conflict. Maybe he's not Link per se, but there's a Link character basically. There could also be the other imprisoning war. the pre Link to the Past imprisoning war. There's just so many opportunities, I think, for the history of the series to be explored, for sure.
Let's be real here. Everyone, when they saw the Imprisoning War mentioned Tears of Kingdom, was probably thinking it was going to be that Imprisoning War.
Pre the game's release, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And I still kind of wonder what the hell, why there's Rauru, and they're basically two different characters with the same name and role.
I view that sort of in the same vein as, like, you know, how many characters are there named Impa that are not the same character, right? Or Beetle, especially when it comes to like royalty or nobility. You know, it's like just like it's a name that's associated with royalty that gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah, and all the time kings would like be born with different names, and then they would change their name to George or Edward, so they could be King George V or whatever.
Oh yeah,
right?
True. Great. Well, I guess, was there any other stray thoughts anyone had that they want to throw in the mix or open up?
Is it me, or does it feel like Age of Imprisonment kind of lacks like the really hard post-game challenges?
Yes, absolutely. I was massively, and now that we're out of the spoilers, I was so disappointed by the lack of unlockable characters. Like the fact that there's no villains that are unlockable. You don't get to unlock anyone close to like Maz Koshia or anything like that. And I know that's why they're releasing an update so quickly, because I think they knew when they released it that, you know, it's lacking. Like, I have never played a Warriors game where you can't unlock any of the villains. That's like that's a tradition that the series has always had, right? Even I'm playing Dynasty Warriors 2 right now, and I'm currently trying to unlock Lu Bu, who's one of the villains of the game, right? So like Warriors games always have unlockable villains.
Yeah.
And And I just assumed that would be the case for this one. I was bitterly disappointed when it wasn't. But I know it'll be in an update.
It better be. I need playable Ganondorf. I actually, you reminded me of a point that I meant to bring up way earlier. You know, in the original Hyrule Warriors, there's a portion of the main story campaign where you briefly play as Ganondorf for a few missions. And I half expected something of that nature in this game as well. I think there's a good way to make a villain a credible threat is to have you do those things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, play as him and get to see him wreaking havoc.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have both the player winning missions as well as the villain becoming this dangerous, threat and rising to power.
Not to keep going back to Star Wars, but it's like at the start of Force Unleashed where you play as Darth Vader and you just like slaughter all of the Wookiees. And by the end of it, you're like, wow, Darth Vader's really strong.
Yeah.
Talking of which, what happened to Twin Rover after like the first 3 missions?
Absolutely. That's got to be in the first wave of the update. I'm really hoping we see something with Twin Rova. Although I'm worried because they weren't named on screen.
That one did bother me actually as well. We know they have names.
It's like wrote on their clothes.
It's written,
right?
yeah, they have like the sashes that are Kome and Kotake.
I think that was Nintendo's attempt at giving like a wink and nod to us, and then we just took it really seriously. I unfortunately don't think they're going to do anything with them.
I have a theory. Because you know how in Ocarina of Time, they're 400 years old?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So my theory is it's the same Twin Rova.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't kill them in this game because they have to age into the 400-year-olds who resurrect Ganondorf. And this is true founding.
I'm actually aligned with that theory. I'm not a refounding believer personally. I'm an original founding purist, I guess. And it's funny is because I think my stance on that is for the same reasoning that people will cite for refounding, in that I think it's the cleanest, simplest explanation that just makes the most sense without kind of erasing the rest of the lore of the series. All that is a really long roundabout way to say that I agree with you, Gabe. So
Yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, like when we beat them, as you said, like 3 missions in or whatever, I mean, we kill them or do they just go away?
I think
They just
go
retreat.
away.
They go back and report to Ganon to say there's a crazy construct flying around.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think most of us maybe thought or hoped that they would be like a big boss in this game, like a mini boss or something. So yeah, the theory is like, well, it can't, because then if you kill them, then they can't live for 400 years and create another Ganon.
Incarnate, right?
Yeah.
Like in Oracle's games, it's a new set of Twin Rova, right? So they can reincarnate, I think.
Yeah,
But
that's true. It's a good point.
I will say one thing that I'm very thankful to Age of Imprisonment for, and I think it's the testament of a good Zelda experience, is that it feels like it's the first Zelda release in a while where the conversation afterwards is not just people complaining about it, but instead it's theorizing. Like, I feel like Age of Imprisonment has kicked off a whole new wave of discussion about the refounding theory and the timeline placement and stuff like that, that I haven't really seen since Breath of the Wild, because most of Tears of the Kingdom discourse was about the quality of the game, right? It was not really about there was not a lot of theorizing coming out of it. And then obviously Age of Calamity, it was just people talking about the ending and whether they were lied to and stuff like that. And it feels like Age of Imprisonment is the first one in a while where it released and then people just sort of mostly spent time taking that information from the game and theorizing with it, which is the sign of a good Zelda release and a healthy community, in my opinion. So
Gabe, you brought this up actually about the original or refounding, and it does make me want to ask everyone real quick basically what your stance on that is, and also if this game has impacted that stance at all, whether it's solidified or altered your stance on the sort of refounding or original founding sort of theory, and if you just don't care either way, that's also a valid answer.
To be honest, whatever happens, it feels like, and like this game, Tears of the Kingdom, other games like it, kind of imply that most of the Zelda timeline is kind of being retconned in some sense. It's like, it's clear stuff like the end of Wind Waker is clearly just not the end of Hyrule as we know it, and it was a Hyrule beforehand that comes back and all this stuff there. So I feel like whatever way it happens, you got the same kind of things to talk about there. There's always going to be the question of, if it's a refounding, then what will say the depths? If it's original founding, how'd they come back?
Yeah, I guess that also plays into timeline branching or convergence, or if you subscribe to a particular branch of the timeline, or etc., right, as well. So there's a lot of factors at play. Yeah.
does kind of also open questions, I guess, of how the Echoes of Wisdom story factors into a lot of these other stuff like Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, and other previous games. I feel like Found versus Refound's a hard one because it's like there's all this stuff in Tears of the Kingdom and Age of Imprisonment which wasn't in the other timeline branches, which is, if it's the original Founding, implies it always was there, but somehow disappeared between those games. But then if it's a refounding, then I guess it also could imply that those species evolved in all the timelines at some point. Because it's like Koroks were in that, didn't they evolve, didn't they first appear in like Wind Waker or something, they didn't evolve in that backstory of that game. But then we don't see them in, say, the Twilight Princess version of the timeline or the Downfall timeline. But we do see them in the Wild era. And the same goes to Rito, which were again from Wind Waker's timeline, but then weren't originally the other two timelines. So the question is, if they are all the same timeline now, or if it took place another timeline, then how did those guys come about the same way a second time out of nowhere? It feels like they've just left it so vague and open-ended. There's just so many questions.
About 2 years ago, I pretty firmly decided that I think that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are just in their own universe, completely detached from the rest of the timeline. Fair. And everything Nintendo has released since then, they're not connecting it to the rest of the timeline. And so, like, because of that, I have no stress trying to tie it to the rest of the timeline. And so for me, I have no trouble believing that this was the first Hyrule, because I don't believe it's attached to the rest of the Hyrules.
So more its own continuity.
Yeah, exactly. But I also have no problem with the refounding theory, because we have plenty of real world examples, like the Holy Roman Empire was like happened like multiple times in multiple different places, right? And you even have the Byzantine Roman Empire compared to the Western Roman Empire, two different peoples, but they both called themselves Rome, right? So I have no problem with the idea of there being an ancient Hyrule kingdom and then a modern Hyrule kingdom. That doesn't bother me at all either. So like, I'm fine with it either way, but personally I guess technically I believe in the founding theory, because I believe that the games are detached from the main timeline.
When you said everything they've released since Breath of the Wild, though, I'm just curious, as like a slightly tangential thought, if Echoes of Wisdom falls in that.
No, I would lump I meant everything related to like the Breath of the Wild games.
Right.
That was a misspeak. But no, Echoes of Wisdom doesn't really impact it at all.
Okay.
I do think some form of null probably exists in the Breath of the Wild continuity, but yeah, who knows? They put Echoes of Wisdom in the timeline, you know, like if this game was part of the timeline, eventually we'd get answers from them, and we're just not getting answers. So to me, that seems to be a sign. Instead of trying to explain why there are references to all three timelines, but it only goes into one of them, hey, that's just its own thing.
I'm a refounder. That just makes the most sense to me. I think it definitely takes place way in the distant future, but there's enough links for me to previous games that I think that Wild's era is just way, way, way in the distant future, and somehow the timelines converged, and I try not to think about that part too much, but I think the connections are there, and nothing about this game super changed that. I think if we had seen the Master Sword, that would have been definitive proof. We didn't, so there's still that ambiguity there for folks who like that. One interesting tidbit that someone pointed out on one of my streams was that on the map, it looked like Hyrule was pretty flooded, so that could be like another point towards the refounding, like post-flood theory. We didn't really see that when we were actually exploring the maps ourselves, but who knows? But I just thought that was kind of an interesting little nugget of lore there too. But yeah, I like the refounding theory, and nothing about this game really changed that for me.
It's such a weird one for me, because like you'd think as like a Zelda lore fanatic I'd have like a definitive answer on this, but like I honestly sort of just fall somewhere in between with like a sort of, I don't know. I can see good arguments for both, to be honest. At first, I was probably more on the side of refounding, and for similar reasons that KT brought up. It just sort of made sense to me, and I'm also on that sort of train of thought where it's like, I don't think too much about how the timelines would converge. It's just, you know, it's a video game, that can happen. But like, I think now I sort of just sit somewhere in the middle where I'm like, there's so many rabbit holes I've seen now that have brought up so many good arguments for both, which I really love about that, and I love that I'm stuck in the middle. But it kind of makes it hard to pick one. I think I side slightly more with refounding, but I don't really know, to be honest. They're both good arguments.
I think that is, like you said, I think that's one of the cool things is that, you know, as the community, we sort of have this back and forth going, and there's sort of a opposing views. And it kind of takes me back to the days of like the splitists and the linearists in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like,
it's like the new version of that.
Exactly. It's this generation of games version of the splittist versus linearist debates.
We'll probably have another event like this in another 10 years when they decide to do something funky with the lore.
Right. Yeah. So, but I do love that we can have that sort of conversation of like, and that people on both sides can bring up such compelling points about why it's one or the other. Yeah, it's great. That's what I love.
And how nice is it to be arguing about lore instead of arguing about whether Age of Calamity was a marketing scam or whether Tears of the Kingdom is actually a terrible game.
Exactly. We're back to arguing about the things that matter.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No, absolutely.
I think the Zelda community is trending to being in a healthy place again, and I'm happy to see it.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Nature's
definitely.
healing.
Yeah, no, it's nice to talk about the game itself and not the meta around the game. Very cool. Well, I don't want to take up your guys' entire day, but I want to thank you guys for being a part of this discussion. If you want to plug your channel or a specific project you're working on or something, or if it's just like a general, this is who I am, that's cool too.
I've always got some irons in the fire. Working on like 3 different videos right now. But yeah, I just make Zelda theory videos for the most part. So come check them out if you're interested. Next one's going to be about how Makar Island is dead Makar. Calmo planted roots and became a tree. So I'm going to say that Makar planted roots and became the tree on Makar Island.
I love it.
It'll probably come out before this comes out.
I look forward to it. And I'm going to recommend people watch your Zenzonai video because I really liked that one.
Oh, thank you.
I guess I could run the Game Reinvented channel and websites. I don't really have many projects ongoing at that point at the moment, but I mean, I do have some videos about Age Imprisonment I want to make at some point. And there are some videos about fan projects I guess I've got to cover at some point as well. So I guess there's something there. Check out the website and YouTube channel, I guess.
9 facts you didn't know about Zelda bosses in Tears of the Kingdom was a recent one that I really enjoyed as well.
Yeah, you can find me at my channel, which is just Hyro Gamer. And yeah, I make all sorts of Zelda lore videos, theories, speculation. I'm currently working on a series going over the NPC lore for all the 3D games. I've already covered Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, so next up is Wind Waker. And yeah, I've also got a Q&A video coming out. I don't know if this video will be out by then, but there's going to be a little Q&A I'm doing as a 10-year anniversary because my channel turned 10 years old 2 days ago.
Holy shit, really?
So yeah, doing a
Oh my gosh.
Happy decade, my friend.
Wow.
Thank you.
Congrats.
officially old as a YouTube channel. That's what I've got going on.
That's amazing, though. I really liked recently your 5 retro Zelda enemies. Dig Dogger mentioned.
So my channel is called Kothiri Theory. I do a lot of lore breakdowns and theories. Right now I'm working on a video breaking down some of the answered and unanswered questions from Age of Imprisonment, the theories that I got right and the ones that I got super wrong. And then after that, I'm going to do a bit more deep dive into some of those specific lore nuggets that we got throughout Age of Imprisonment. Like my special thing that I love to focus on are the Gerudo. And I think we got a lot of interesting little tidbits about like the factions within the Gerudo and those politics of the Gerudo Desert. So I'm interested to explore that more. And if you're interested in that as well, feel free to follow along.
Pretty much every Kokiri Theory video is a banger. So, I mean, I guess I'm doing this thing where I'm going to recommend one video from each of you guys. It's a bit of a pivot, but I'm going to say the 1 year later retrospective from Echoes of Wisdom was one I really liked. Nehru, last but not least.
Listen, do you like iceberg videos?
Oh, yeah.
I bet you do. Well, I got good news for you. I'm working on an iceberg video series. One is out already, and it's about an hour and 40 minutes long, and I am on the precipice. I am so close I can taste it to releasing the second iceberg video, which is going to be about 2 hours and 10 minutes long. So very soon here, you'll have about 4 hours worth of Zelda iceberg materials. And the next iceberg video has, I just looked, every single person in this conversation contributing. Every single person here is in the next iceberg video.
Hell yeah.
Star-studded.
What luck is that?
That's amazing.
So yeah, if you want to hear Captain show off the BS Zelda games, if you want to hear CM30 talk about some cool facts, if you want to hear Gabe talk about I Am Error, if you want to hear Hyrule Gamer talk about fishing, and if you want to hear KT talk about Rito divergence theory, come to the iceberg.
I love a nice 2-hour Zelda video to get me through all my chores.
It's a banger. It's a banger. It has very little to do with me. This one was a community effort, so it's going to be great.
Very little to do with me, he says, as if he didn't organize the whole thing.
I have to be honest, these two of the videos I've been looking forward to most for a while now.
This one has been a ton of work, but it is going to be a huge payoff, so
Amazing.
I hope everyone enjoys it.
And to continue my trend of recommending someone's video, one I really liked was the 7 out of 10 games video that you did, and how 7 out of 10 is not a bad score, guys. We just forgot the nuance of critiquing. I thought it was a great video, even if I would rate Tears of the Kingdom a little higher than you did. So for you, dear viewer, watching this, there's links to everyone's channels and at least one of their videos in the description below. So please go and check them out. They're all channels absolutely worth subscribing to.
And I'm gonna follow what CM30 is recommending in the chat, and I'm gonna recommend a Captain Bergerson video. I want everyone to go to the chat, search up Captain Bergerson literal legend theory, and watch him from a million years ago passionately arguing literal legend theory.
It's bad. It's old and bad.
That's my recommendation.
No. He had to dig up an ancient video from the depths. Oh no. That video is old and bad. You don't have to watch it. Thank you all so much for being here and being part of the conversation. Again, links are down below. I appreciate you watching, and bye.
Bye.
Bye.